You have to be patient, put in some work, and maybe even have some luck. Ron clearly listened to Andy's words of wisdom, as his directing career got off to an explosive start. Make a commotion. In 1984, the fanciful romantic comedy starring Tom Hanks and a mermaid had an unexpectedly big hit. Evidently, everyone was fine with suspending their disbelief about a romance between a fish and a woman, because both audiences and critics adored it. It had the ideal proportions of sentiment, comedy, and seriousness for a feature film. Is anything transpiring? In a flash. Cocoon, Ron's 1985 film about life, aging, and, strangely enough, aliens, continued his string of successful films. We now turn to Andy Griffith, the elusive man in the background. Andy was quieter and more reserved than his gregarious TV character. He was not the type to divulge personal details to news outlets since he treasured his privacy. His friends and acquaintances, like Ron, spoke highly of his perfect manners, strong moral compass, and wicked sense of humor. Music was another one of Andy's many passions. It was not uncommon to hear him playing guitar or singing gospel tunes when he wasn't giving people life advice. He never allowed celebrity transform him into someone he wasn't. His small-town North Carolina upbringing defined him. It was Andy's modesty and work ethic that influenced Ron the most, according to Ron. If it weren't for his guitar skills and life lessons, Andy Griffith might have been the most awesome mentor ever. The fact that Andy Griffith was humble and introspective won over everyone who met him. One of Hollywood's most revered filmmakers, Ron Howard, inherited the trait. Consider the Apollo 13 mission in 1995. This film is perfect for you if you enjoy suspenseful plots with a dash of NASA drama. The real-life tale of a space mission that went horribly wrong and how Ron made it into an exhilarating show is told here. The picture was nominated for 9 Oscars, including Best Picture. And Beautiful Mind follows. In 2001, the film delves into the brilliant chaos of mental illness. It was a critical and commercial success, and Ron won his first Academy Awards for Best Director and Best Picture for his work on the film. His ability to tell enormously popular stories about real people is almost like a secret code. Andy Griffith's last years were anything from easy. A heart attack and the extremely unusual Guillain-Barré syndrome, which affects the neurological system, were among his severe health challenges. The point is, Andy wasn't deterred by that. He continued to pursue his passion for entertainment and maintained relationships with his admirers. Even when times were rough, he would often talk about how his love of storytelling and his job kept him going. Even those who didn't share his enthusiasm for Andy's perseverance were impressed, like Ron Howard, who held him in high esteem for maintaining an optimistic outlook in the face of health challenges. It is reported that Andy's dogged determination allowed him to recover from a serious heart attack in the 1980s at a rate no one had anticipated. Despite a temporary inability to walk caused by Guillain-Barré syndrome, he continued to give presentations and make appearances. If you needed a boost, Andy was the boss who could give you more than any motivational speaker. Ron would be the object of his admiration as he looked up at the man and filmmaker Ron had become. Where does Ron stand? While he praised Andy for his unwavering friendship and career guidance, he repressed all of his emotions. Andy Griffith is someone that everyone would benefit from having on their side. Upon meeting the man, you likely felt as though all you needed was a smile and a fishing pole to conquer the world. In Ron's eyes, they were more than just sentimental moments. The emotions felt were mixed. Andy was more than cast as an actor. He had the wisdom of an uncle and could never say the wrong thing. The vibe at their last gatherings was one of that silent connection you feel when you're with someone who truly understands you. Like a priceless relic, Ron holds on to Andy's parting words. But at least there's no worry about what if I mess up this? From the perspective of their friendship, they have left an indelible mark on television history as Aunt Bee's pie recipes. Their genuine friendship enhanced the Andy Griffith Show in a unique way. In Sheriff Taylor and Opie, viewers saw more than just a couple. They witnessed 2 people who cared deeply about one another. A father-son relationship? It was the benchmark for clean, family-friendly atmospheres. The level of warmth, respect, and excellent communication would be the envy of any family therapist. Plus, the enchantment is still very much there. Just like Andy, Ron hasn't let his memory fade. As if he were reminiscing over coffee, he is the one who throws Andy stories into interviews in a casual manner. The principles Andy instilled in him, such as kindness, respect, and maintaining composure under duress, are the foundation of his Hollywood success, he says. Ron, as a director, ensured that Andy's legacy would live on in his sets. Nobody here is a diva, instead, everyone works together respectfully and treats each other like family. Leadership like this would have Andy's blessing, and it ensures that his legacy lives on in every picture that Ron is a part of. He is merely attempting to evade the situation. He would follow his dad's lead as he explained the character's motivations and development in terms a child might grasp. He would also make sure to tell Opie that it was just on TV and not in real life whenever he saw that the character was getting away with something. Leave it to the pros. However, his father had a life outside of performing. That was his unique talent. No matter how strong they were, he was unfazed. Andy Griffith, Don Knotts, Aaron Rubin, and Sheldon Leonard were among the legendary people he collaborated with. "Hold up, I don't think this is working," his dad would say, even when all these famous people were involved. "Opie is being perceived as excessively spoiled. Make their relationship more genuine instead than making fun of them." Worst of all, they paid attention. After hearing him out, Andy and Sheldon came to an agreement. The show's trajectory changed drastically after that alteration, when producers decided to humanize Opie's connection with his dad. Now we're in the latter days of filming. The rap party was completely new to him at the age of 14. Andy Griffith was prepared to move on, even though the show remained at the top. In all candor, he seemed to be fine with it. Sports, directing, and going back to school were some of his other hobbies. The last day of filming, however, hit like a ton of bricks. Andy suddenly broke down and started crying when he took the microphone at the celebration. This wasn't your average series finale. It was the end of an era in his life that he had no idea he would miss until that very second. As he said his farewells, he was leaving behind friends and a way of life that had molded him deeply. Plus, it hurt. They revived the series for a reunion film almost 2 decades after it had originally aired. He was already on to something else by that point. He had even abandoned Happy Days to focus on directing. Even though things had changed, Andy had urged him to come back and play Opie again. He naturally consented. And when he did, it brought back a flood of memories of the amazing individuals he had worked with all those years ago. None of the recollections from my youth were altered. No weakening of the bond. The passage of time seemed imperceptible. Now let's proceed. It wasn't enough for Ron Howard to simply ride the Opie Taylor bandwagon indefinitely. He quickly transitioned into other roles, such as his memorable performance in George Lucas's 1973 film American Graffiti. The success of the film was obvious. No longer was Ron merely that boy from Mayberry. Simultaneously, he dove headfirst into his studies at the School of Cinematic Arts at USC, ready to master the craft of filmmaking. With 1977's Grand Theft Auto, Ron jumped headfirst into filmmaking. That was the wild, low-budget film that Roger Corman, the master of creating magic on a shoestring, produced, not the video game. Cocoon, 1985, a touching science fiction story about aging gracefully or not, and Splash, 1984, a romantic comedy featuring a mermaid that brought hope to all of us, were the next huge hits. It wasn't only as a director that Ron became famous because to these songs. They proved that innovation can happen anywhere, not just in Hollywood. You can't avoid it. Ron gave up the charisma of his hometown for the star power of Hollywood. In all candor, we're better off. Married to Cheryl Alley in 1975 was Ron Howard. And nearly half a century later, they're still going strong, despite all the Hollywood odds. Ron and Cheryl have stood out in a field where marriages can be as protracted as a film. Cheryl, a talented writer, became his rock as he rode the roller coaster of fame and fortune. Hollywood, let's face it, isn't exactly a picnic. Bryce Dallas Howard, an accomplished actress and filmmaker, is a member of their close-knit family that they created together. No matter how many red carpets the Howards walked, they never lost their grounded attitude. Ron attributes his professional achievements to Cheryl's steadfast encouragement. In addition, he frequently mentions how his role as a father influences his storytelling. Family here is more than just close. They collaborate, attend red carpet events, and likely have the most fascinating group messages ever. Ron and Cheryl's marriage is a testament to the power of love in the entertainment industry. Andy Griffith, meanwhile, had more spectacular things to offer following his time in Mayberry. He played the part of a savvy yet down-to-earth lawyer in Matlock. A dapper suit and a touch of Southern hospitality will always be in vogue. he regained the hearts of viewers, and the show went on to achieve even greater success. Andy, though, wasn't finished yet. He has recorded albums in the country and gospel genres, drawing inspiration from his childhood in the South. Andy considered his time in Mayberry to be the pinnacle of his career, despite all his accomplishments since then. Plus, he maintained tight relationships with his co-stars, particularly Ron H., whom he figuratively referred to as his son. In his twilight years, Andy expertly balanced his professional and personal lives, preserving his reputation as one of the most beloved performers in America. After Ron Howard left Mayberry in the 1950s, he went directly to Milwaukee, at least in the sitcom version of it. In 1974, when Happy Days premiered on television, Ron played the role of Richie Cunningham, the neatnik everyone wished they could have as a best buddy. Fonzie, the most awesome mechanic ever, leather jackets, and catchphrases were all gifts from the show's enormous success. Ron had other ambitions, even if Richie was the center of attention. During his free time, he immersed himself in the world of directing on set and even directed a couple episodes. Acting was only one aspect of Happy Days for Ron. A career in filmmaking that would come to define him was launched from that point on. The endearing Mayberry sheriff, Andy Griffith, was more than that. Even when he wasn't on film, he was a dedicated mentor who helped others. When filming ended, Andy wasn't the sort to punch out. He kept on giving young Ron Howard advice, and he always did it with that genuine, down-to-earth charisma. They maintained a tight relationship even after Andy Griffith's show ended, frequently seeing each other for family gatherings or quiet conversations. In supporting Ron's ambitions to become a filmmaker, Andy did more than that. He reassured him that breaking into the Hollywood industry was as easy as fishing. Despite his lack of official producer and writer credentials, Andy proved to be an exceptional natural leader on the show. His contribution was immense. Of course, Ron Howard would want to keep quiet about his appearances on Andy Griffith's show. Growing up on one of the most beloved TV shows in the world makes every fan want to know the inside scoop. Nevertheless, Ron is now revealing his friendship with Andy Griffith after years of secrecy. Did Mayberry really look that picture perfect? In Andy's off-screen life, did he exude the charisma of Sheriff Taylor? You might be surprised by what Ron has to say, so be prepared. Names like Andy Griffith and Ron Howard conjure up images of the endearing small-town charm of Andy Griffith's program. Fishing excursions and Mayberry life lessons weren't the only things that brought them together, though. On screen, they had fun and experienced emotional moments, but off-screen, their relationship was rocky. Ron Howard spills the beans during his time with Andy Griffith for the first time. As a father-son relationship, I can assure you that it is not all strolls and conversations on Sundays. Are Ron's long-hidden truths now ready to come out? Concerning the reports of tension, what is the truth? The renowned director Ron Howard oversaw the productions of Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind. It was as if Ron Howard, a mere youth, were attempting to literally make it big in Hollywood. Duncan, Oklahoma is the place of birth on March 1, 1954. It looked like Ron was bound for the limelight. What are your other options when both of your parents are in the acting industry? Take up farming? A commercial featured little Ron in his first appearance, which was at the tender age of 15 months. While the rest of us were still learning to walk, Ron was performing his first gig to perfection. Following the family's relocation to Hollywood, Rance Howard took on the role of unofficial acting coach for his son. As if that weren't cool enough, Ron's parents even let him sit in the front row during live TV shows. Early performances by Ron, who had parental guidance, were polished and endearing. So, how does Ron feel about Andy Griffith, the real-life love of his life? Stay tuned, because things are going to get even more intriguing from here on out. Ron Howard wasn't a lucky charm. He spent his formative years immersed in the Hollywood scene. Picture this, you're 5 years old and you get your acting debut in The Journey. In 1959. Learning to tie their shoes is a major milestone for most children at that age. However, Ron was already collaborating with experts on screen time. People didn't take notice of his talent, though, until he made an appearance on Playhouse 90. Even though he likely still needed nagging to eat his veggies, critics lauded his performances for being so nuanced. Ron had already begun to make waves in Hollywood by the time he tried out for the Andy Griffith program in 1960. His intense red hair may have piqued the interest of some casting directors, but it was his natural ability and genuine interest in the craft that ultimately made him a star. Early on, he received numerous callbacks due to the fact that his hair was the main attraction. Ron got famous after landing the role of Opie Taylor when he was 6 years old. His chemistry with Andy Griffith on-screen was magical, but the off-screen events were equally significant. Andy became his mentor, instructing him on the importance of character motivations and humorous timing. Life lessons packaged in the charming package of a sitcom, not just acting lessons. That legendary audition moment followed. The Andy Griffith Show set was more than simply a place of employment for Ron. He gained knowledge there. He was learning about teamwork and narrative as his classmates were working out who would be the class leader at playtime. Be honest with me. Who among us might claim that Andy Griffith was their daily source of life guidance while they were at work? North Carolina's Mount Airy, sometimes called the Plan for Mayberry, was the setting for Andy Griffith's early adventures. Andy didn't exactly start off on the right foot when he was born on June 1, 1926. Despite coming from modest means, his parents managed to purchase an old trombone for him while he was growing up during the Great Depression. Andy had other ambitions in life than to become a music instructor. He found success performing in nightclubs thanks to his wit and storytelling abilities. His breakthrough came when a humorous monologue he gave about football, the game itself, went viral long before the term had even been coined. The fact that it sold over 800,000 copies shows how far a good chuckle can go. It was that surprise hit that launched Andy's career in show business, in which his modesty and easygoing charisma were instantly recognizable. Andy was more than simply a co-star to young Ron Howard and Opie while they weren't filming. When Andy wanted to make a point, he would often sprinkle in a story or two to make it more accessible. Later on, Ron came clean about how Andy's knowledge had an impact on him in his career and personal life. Ron continued to call Andy for guidance after the show ended, and the two remained friends. Andy was more than just a TV icon, I think we can all agree. He was an ideal role model for a mentor. Intelligent and kind to boot, with a touch of charisma to lighten the mood. As a touching memento of their friendship, Andy Griffith gave Ron Howard an autographed guitar, which Ron holds in high regard. Their connection is a prime example of a mentor-mentee dynamic in Hollywood, based on mutual respect. After its 1960 debut, The Andy Griffith Show immortalized the virtues and charm of small-town America. It was one of the most watched shows on television during its whole 8th season. Sheriff Taylor, played by Andy Griffith, personified empathy and experience, while Opie, played by Ron Howard, personified naivete and wonder. They had a heartwarming father-son bond as a pair. A welcoming, family-like environment was nurtured by the staff and cast behind the scenes, aiding in the production's upbeat mood. One of the most famous TV themes of all time is The Fish in Hole, the show's signature whistling theme. In addition to establishing Andy Griffith as an icon of television, the show was pivotal in Ron Howard's rise to fame. It is never easy to grow out of a beloved role from boyhood, but Ron Howard did it with extraordinary poise. After The Andy Griffith Show ended, I felt like something had changed. It wasn't your average season finale. An era had come to a close. Andy Griffith was about to speak when it hit him. He was standing at the microphone. I started crying. Not a few tears fell from his eyes. His head was bowed in grief. Leaving a job was only part of it. A family and their way of life were disappearing. The show had meant more to him than simply a job, he realized. For him, it was important. He felt uncertain about the future without the familiar faces and reassuring regularity now that it was all coming to an end. In hindsight, though, it wasn't merely the program that had shaped his youth. The key was in seeing how his dad had taken a seemingly little move and made it into something monumental. The Korean War had put his father's ambitions on hold, but he had traveled to California in the hopes of finally realizing them. Unfortunately, he lost out on his big break. He had a tiny boy when it arrived. And as luck would have it, his dad ended up coaching him in acting, imparting wisdom he could never have received from anybody else. This was no ordinary acting workshop. His father explained the craft in terms a young child could grasp, using language that was both simple and powerful. He was already learning the simple basics of Stanislavski when he was 4 or 5 years old. Situations like Opie's attempts to evade his homework would be dissected by his dad, breaking down the feelings that lie beneath the surface. Opie isn't interested in doing his homework, but his dad insists that he should.